The lights were too bright. The air in the room felt thin. On a cool March evening, millions across the globe sat in silence, their eyes glued to one live feed. The Global Future Forum, New York City. On stage, seated just 2 chairs apart, were 2 opposites: Karoline Leavitt, a sharp-tongued American political starlet known for her brash views on Africa, and Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso. Karoline smirked. "Let's be honest," she said, turning to the crowd. "Africa's problems are self-inflicted. Corruption, poverty, it's all internal." The room froze. The camera zoomed in on Traoré's face. Calm, still. His fingers touched his chest gently. Then he stood. "Before you judge Africa," he said softly, eyes locked on hers, "go learn history." Gasps echoed. Phones lit up. Hashtags were born right there in that moment. He hadn't even raised his voice. And yet, a storm had begun. What the world didn't know was that this wasn't just a debate. For Traoré, this was personal. For Africa, this was war with silence. When he was 9, Traoré had asked his grandmother why they had no clean water. She sat him down on the dusty floor, her eyes heavy with memories. "My son," she whispered, "when I was your age, soldiers came. They took your grandfather, took our land. They said it was for civilization. They beat us, used us, and left us with nothing but pain." That day, Traoré stopped playing with sticks and started reading history books. He learned about how Africa's riches were looted, how schools were forbidden for black children, how his ancestors were chained and shipped like cargo, how flags changed, but oppression stayed. So when Karoline said, "Africa's problems are self-inflicted," it wasn't a political insult to him. It was a knife to every forgotten grave in Africa. He didn't speak right away after her words. Instead, he took a deep breath and whispered something that cut deeper than a scream. "Do you know what colonization is?" She rolled her eyes. The world didn't. But they were about to. Because Traoré wasn't just going to speak, he was about to expose the truth, and no one, not even Karoline Leavitt, was ready for what was coming. Within 45 seconds of Traoré's statement, Go Learn History began trending. But it was what came next that silenced even the most powerful media empires. Traoré walked over to the moderator, took the mic, and addressed Karoline directly, not with hate, but with heartbreak. "Do you know why my people are still digging for water with their hands? Because colonial powers drew our borders with pencils and greed. They stole everything and left us with nothing but debts." Karoline scoffed. "That was a long time ago." Traoré's voice trembled, but not with fear. "No, it was yesterday. Because our schools are still shaped by your languages, our economy still chained to your banks, and our peace shattered by your weapons." The room went silent. Even Karoline's smirk faded. "Before you speak about Africa again," he said slowly, "go learn about the hands that bled to build your comfort. Go learn history." A tear slid down an old woman's cheek in the crowd. A girl in Kenya paused her chores. A boy in Haiti raised his fist. Traoré hadn't just spoken for Burkina Faso. He had spoken for every forgotten voice. The world would never be the same. After the debate, Ibrahim Traoré left the stage quietly. No press, no smiles. He walked into the dressing room, removed his green beret, and sat alone for a moment. There was a photo in his pocket, worn and folded. It was of his mother, Awa Traoré, holding him as a baby in front of a crumbling clay house. She had died when he was 13. Malaria. No medicine, no clinic, no help. He remembered her coughing through the night, whispering to him, "One day you must fight. Not with bullets, with truth." That night in New York, he had done just that. His team knocked gently. "Captain, the world is watching. They want more." He looked up, eyes damp. "This was never for the cameras," he said. "This was for the boy who asked his mom why they were poor." That boy was still inside him. That photo wasn't just memory. It was his reason. In that moment, millions saw a leader. But inside, he was just a son of Africa, aching to make his mother proud. And with one sentence, "Go learn history," he already had. The next morning, headlines exploded. African president humiliates U.S. pundit on live TV. Go learn history sparks global reckoning. Ibrahim Traoré, hero or hype? Karoline Leavitt, now cornered by backlash, didn't back down. Instead, she posted on X, "Let's not forget, Burkina Faso is still one of the poorest nations in the world. How's that for leadership?" The comment received 90,000 likes and 2.5 million furious replies. One read, "You insulted a whole continent and expect applause?" But Karoline wasn't moved. She booked interviews, defended her words, laughed it off. Traoré? He said nothing. He didn't need to. Because across the globe, students were walking into class holding signs that read, "I am not poor, I am recovering." In Accra, a teacher rewrote her history syllabus overnight. In Brazil, a mural of Traoré went up with the words, "He spoke, we woke." Karoline had the spotlight. But Traoré had something deeper, the people's pain, finally heard. 3 days later, Traoré received an envelope. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. The English was shaky, but the message was clear. "My name is Omar. I am 12 years old. I live in Sudan. My father was killed in the war. My mother cries every night. But when you said, 'Go learn history,' I stood up in class. I told the teacher I want to learn everything, because I want to fight with truth, like you. You are not just a leader. You are my hope." Traoré read the letter 3 times. Then he cried. He hadn't cried in years, not even when he was shot at during the uprisings in Ouagadougou. But now, with this boy's trembling handwriting in his hands, the dam broke. He whispered, "I'll carry you with me, Omar." He called his press secretary and said, "Book me for an address. Not to governments, to children." When he stepped back onto the stage a week later, it wasn't to defend himself. It was to speak to the next generation of Africans. Because history wasn't just in books anymore. It was now being written by kids like Omar and guided by men like Traoré. The hall was packed. No leaders, just children, teachers, parents. No red carpet, no polished introductions. Just silence until Ibrahim Traoré walked in. He stood with no script in his hands, only Omar's letter in his pocket. "I am not here as a president," he said. "I am here as someone who was once a barefoot boy, who was told he would amount to nothing." The children sat up. He told them about his village, about his mother dying from a disease that had a cure, but not for the poor. He spoke of carrying water for 5 kilometers, of hiding under a table to read history books because there was only one candle for the house. "Some say Africa is broken. I say Africa is healing," he said. "But we must stop believing lies told by people who never walked our soil." He ended with one sentence. "You are not weak. You are survivors of a stolen century." A girl in Uganda fainted from tears. A teacher in Namibia sobbed. Omar, watching from a dusty solar-powered screen, held his chest and whispered, "That's my president." By mid-April, the debate had turned into a movement. African youth began filming themselves in school uniforms saying, "We are the children of kings, not beggars. Go learn history." Black students in France staged silent protests with duct tape across their mouths, marked with the word truth. Across the U.S., students organized re-education days, where African history, not the watered-down version, was taught by volunteers. But the backlash was loud, too. News anchors in Western countries accused Traoré of stirring division. One even said, He's charismatic, yes, but dangerously emotional. Still, the numbers told another story. 72 million video views. 3 million new followers across Traoré's official pages. One powerful message: Africa is tired of being misunderstood. Karoline, she stayed silent. Because for once the fire wasn't political. It was personal, it was raw, it was righteous. And the world was beginning to understand: you don't throw stones at a man who walks with truth. In Burkina Faso, far from cameras, a 92-year-old woman named Maman Diallo sat in her straw chair, surrounded by her grandchildren. She hadn't spoken much in years, her eyes tired from watching her land suffer. But when the children showed her a clip of Traoré's speech, she gripped her cane and said, This one speaks like Sankara." She asked for silence, and then she cried, not from sadness, but from relief. She died peacefully that night in her sleep, the village elder said at her funeral. She waited 92 years to hear the truth spoken boldly by one of her own. That was enough. Her story went viral. Traoré heard about it and paused an international meeting to say, "We have lost a queen. Bury her with honor." He didn't have to say her name on TV, because across Africa, there were millions like Maman Diallo, waiting, enduring, praying, and now, finally, witnessing the rising of their sons and daughters. As Traoré's influence grew, not everyone celebrated. Behind closed doors, Western diplomats held secret meetings. One whispered, "He's changing the narrative. We must control it before it spreads." Soon, a leaked document appeared online, accusing Traoré of diverting funds meant for education to armed militias. Major news outlets picked it up. Headlines screamed, "Burkina Faso leader faces corruption allegations amid global praise." Karoline Leavitt returned to primetime TV. Smiling smugly, she said, "You see, the truth always comes out. Maybe he should go learn accountability." People panicked. Some even started pulling back support. But something felt off. The document had no dates, no signatories, no proof. And then, a whistleblower from inside a European embassy came forward anonymously. "The smear campaign is fake. They want to bury him, because he's waking up Africa." The video of that whistleblower was shaky, but real. Traoré stood firm. Let them try. Truth walks slowly, but it never falls. His supporters didn't just return, they doubled. This wasn't just a media war now. It was a fight for Africa's very right to be heard. One night, Karoline sat alone in her apartment, phone buzzing, mentions on fire. She clicked on an email from a name she didn't recognize, Mrs. Anita Olufemi. The message began, "You don't know me. I am a widow in Lagos. I used to believe everything you said about Africa, until I buried my 8-year-old son, because the medication we needed was patented by a company in your country and sold for more than our house costs." I heard President Traoré speak. For the first time I realized I was not ashamed of being African. I was just uninformed. "Karoline, I am not writing in hate. I am writing in hope. Please, go learn history." She read the last line again and again. That night, for the first time in her career, Karoline didn't tweet. Her silence spoke louder than any insult, and though the world didn't see it, a small tear escaped her eye. Because behind the politics, behind the pride, something had started to shift. Truth, whispered gently, had reached even her heart. Just when the movement was strongest, tragedy struck. During a live town hall in Burkina Faso, a man broke through the crowd. He shouted something in French, then pulled out a knife. Security tackled him in seconds, but not before he sliced across the podium, just inches from Traoré's hand. Blood splattered the microphone. Chaos erupted. Mothers screamed, children cried. Later, investigators found a chilling truth. The attacker had been paid in dollars. His orders came from outside Africa. In the hospital, Traoré got stitched up quietly. He refused to cancel his next speech. "I will not be silenced," he said. "Even if they come with knives, I will come with words." And then, he made a decision no one expected. He said he would go to America, not to fight, but to face Karoline in a one-on-one discussion. Not in a hall of politics, but in a classroom full of children. It would be the most watched event in history. And what happened next would break the world's heart. It wasn't a fancy studio, no flashing lights, just a modest classroom in Washington, D.C., filled with students, black, white, Latino, Asian, all aged 11 to 14. Traoré entered first, wearing a simple white shirt, no military badges. Just a father figure now. Karoline came in moments later. The room was quiet. A girl named Maya raised her hand. "Why do people say Africa is poor?" Karoline opened her mouth, but Traoré gently gestured. "May I?" He looked into the eyes of the children and said, "Because that's what the world was told. But Africa is not poor. It's been robbed, again and again. And still, we rise." He pointed at a map and asked, "Do you know how many African countries are still paying colonial taxes to their former masters?" The room gasped. A boy in the back whispered, "Is that even real?" Karoline stared at the children. For the first time, she had no words, because this wasn't a debate anymore. It was truth, held in the innocence of young eyes, and the entire world was watching. After the event, Karoline left the building quietly. No press, no statement, just silence. She sat in her car and stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. "I thought I was right," she whispered. "I thought they were just angry people." Her phone buzzed. A message from an old African-American college classmate read, "Thank you for listening today. You're not weak for changing." She burst into tears. For years, she had believed she was the voice of reason. But now, she realized she'd been a microphone for a history she'd never truly understood. That night, Karoline went live on her personal account. No makeup, no filters. "I want to apologize," she said, voice shaking. "Not because I was attacked online, but because I heard a child ask, 'Why do they say Africa is poor?' And I couldn't answer without lying. Captain Traoré, I don't agree with everything you say, but today you taught me something I never learned in any school. For that, I thank you." And then, she ended with 5 words no one expected. "I will go learn history." The internet went silent, then exploded with love. 2 weeks later, a surprise guest appeared at a special summit for African youth leaders in Kenya. Omar, the 12-year-old Sudanese boy who had written the first letter, skinny, nervous, holding a single folded paper. Traoré walked off stage, knelt down, and hugged him. Omar cried on his shoulder. "Why are you crying?" Traoré asked gently. "Because I didn't know I mattered until you said we do," Omar said. The room wept, and then Traoré did something unforgettable. He handed Omar the microphone. The boy looked into the crowd, his voice barely a whisper. "They tried to make us small, but we are not small. We are the children of the sun. And we are waking up." The crowd stood in tears. The moment was broadcast live and became the most replayed moment on YouTube that year. In that fragile, shaking voice of one Sudanese boy, the world heard the truth of a continent, not through war, not through revenge, but through a child's courage. And behind him stood the man who gave that courage a voice. 2 days after the Kenya summit, Traoré received a private call. It was from Karoline Leavitt. She didn't sound proud or political, just human. "I've been meeting African students here in New York," she said. I realize something, Captain. The children you defend? They're not angry, they're brilliant, and they still believe in us, even when we failed them. Traoré said nothing for a moment, then softly replied, "They don't want to hate you, Karoline. They just want to be heard." There was a pause. Then Karoline said something no one expected. "I want to come to Burkina Faso. Not with cameras, not with press, just to see what I never saw before." Traoré closed his eyes, smiled. "Come, and bring your heart." The next week, Karoline arrived in a small village outside Ouagadougou. No news crew, just her, a backpack, and trembling hands. She washed her face from a hand-dug well, sat under a tree with girls who braided her hair, ate with elders who told her stories of pain and pride. That night she cried herself to sleep, because she had finally learned history, not from books, but from people. On May 25th, Africa Day, Traoré hosted a global broadcast. No military parade, no flags, just a circle of elders, children, and citizens under a baobab tree. He stood barefoot beside Karoline. The world tuned in. Over 900 million views, the most watched live stream in YouTube history. Traoré began, "We are not here to shame anyone. We are here to rise, together." He turned to Karoline. "Do you want to say anything?" She stepped forward, voice shaking. "I once called Africa a mess, but today I know I was the one who was lost. You didn't need saving. I did. I'm sorry." There was silence, then a whisper in the crowd, "We forgive you." Children began to sing a soft African lullaby. Old women danced barefoot, and Traoré, he looked up at the sky and whispered, "Mama, I did it." From South Africa to Senegal, from Haiti to Harlem, people cried. Forgiveness didn't erase history, but it began healing it. And for the first time in centuries, Africa was not begging. Africa was leading. 6 months later, school curriculums changed. New history books were printed, with chapters about colonization, struggle, resistance, and the rise of a man named Ibrahim Traoré. Omar. He was now on a scholarship in Ghana, studying to become a teacher. Karoline. She launched an initiative to sponsor rural African schools, working silently behind the scenes. And Traoré? He stood on no throne. He wore no crown. But he walked with 1 million ancestors in his steps and 1 billion children in his heart. One morning he stood on the same ground where his mother once begged for medicine and opened a new children's hospital in her name. "This is not revenge," he said. "This is restoration." The crowd wept, and so will your viewers, because this story is not fantasy. It is possible. It is what happens when one man speaks truth and refuses to be silenced. If you watch to this point, it means your heart is awake. If this story moved you, let it move the world. Drop a comment. What part broke you? What part healed you? We want to hear your truth. Like this video so more people can find it. And please, subscribe if you believe stories like this must live on. Share this with someone who needs to learn history. And never forget, Africa is not broken. She is rising.